Yeah, so I'm going to talk a bit about kind of trust and mobility, and I'm going to use what3words as a bit of a case study for some of the things I'm thinking about. But actually, lately, I think we've had a really interesting experience in terms of mobility in the last year, where we've had to learn to think quite differently about how important it is isolated to get a delivery. It's actually really important more than ever that delivery arrives at your door and you're not having to go outside and look for a lost driver. And basically, whether you're moving people or you're moving things, the way we think about mobility has had a shift this year, and it's part of a broader shift, I think, that's been going on for a while about the way humans and machines interact. And so I'm just going to share my screen so I can give you guys some examples while I'm talking. Hopefully you can see my screen. Dave, if you can't, give me a shout, but I'm going to assume, unless someone shouts at me, that you guys can see this. So basically, I'm going to talk to you about trust and mobility with what3words as a case study for some of the design things I'm thinking about. But actually, for quite a while, I think we've been really interested, and we've been thinking about how trust forms a really important part of mobility journeys. I think ride-hailing apps are a great example of this. This is a world in which for quite a long time now, I've trusted a stranger. I've got in their car because an app told me to, and I've trusted that stranger to take me where I'd like to go. Now, those journeys have kind of breakpoints in them. Sometimes they might not be able to find me for various reasons to do with, maybe I'm standing inside a building, so the GPS on my phone isn't very good and it can't tell the driver where I am. And actually, increasingly, in the design of these apps and these interactions, you actually do see design choices about trust. So for example, if I go to, before COVID, I used to spend a lot of my life on airplanes. And when I used to go to San Francisco and I used to try and get my lift at the airport, I'd get Lyft to try and collect me. They would actually have this option for me to put on a color on my phone. So I could kind of hold up my phone and it would share a color so the driver could see me more easily. And that's a couple of things going on there. So number one, it's solving a real problem, which is that kind of meeting point between the human who is calling the driver, the machine that's telling the driver where to come to, and the driver themselves. But it's also a design choice, which is around helping me feel confident. So a big part of this, when you're moving somewhere, when you're not driving, you want to feel confident that you're going to get found, you're going to get taken to the right place. And those kinds of design choices, give me a big color I can flash up on my phone to help my Uber or my Lyft driver find me. That's about creating confidence and trust and making sure that those interactions work, those interactions which have got people and machines in the middle of them. So this has been something we've been thinking about for a while from a design perspective. And actually these days, I'd say this year particularly, trust has become much, much more important than it used to be. And that will be, from my perspective, that's a lot about thinking about humans and machines and trusting your machine to take you to the right place. So right now we're in a world where we're being told not to spend too much time with other people outside of our social circles. We're being told to stay inside, don't spend too much time wandering around outside. One of the problems there is I, as a person who's traveled lots and gone to lots of different cities and places around the world, often I do get lost for lots of reasons, and I will often have somebody help me. People often help lost tourists or people, if I'm in London and I'm looking for an office building, I'll often go and say, sorry, I can't find it. Can someone help me? But this is a world in which we're not really supposed to be doing that. So what we'd really like is if our machines could be trusted to take us to the right place. So we don't have to ask for directions. So we don't have to, when we're showing up to a hospital, for example, if you break your arm right now, the last thing you want to do is go to the COVID ward at the hospital. But actually, hospitals are big campuses. They've often got one postal address that gets you to the main entrance, and then lots of different places. It's very easy to get lost. And these are the kind of journeys that mattered before, but they matter even more now. Getting those journeys right, not showing up in the wrong place. And same with delivery. I live in a block of flats in London with multiple entrances, and I very, very often will have a phone call from a lost driver because they just can't work out where to get into in the flat I'm in today. And the problem with that is we have this break, and in the old days, sometimes I would actually have to literally go outside and find the driver and wave at them and say, I'm over here. That doesn't work. If I'm isolating, it doesn't work to keep the driver very safe. So there are these kind of breakpoints which have been around for a long time. But I would say this year, actually, as Sylvia was saying, has accelerated some of this, the need to solve some of these problems quicker than we have been before. And actually thinking about cars and navigation, this will be quite a familiar sight to lots of you, not just the cracked screen here, but the fact that this is a car which may well have inbuilt navigation, but what's happening is somebody has stuck their phone up on the dash. And that's a really interesting thing, because actually now cars have incredibly good navigation. Most cars have really, really great maps, really, really good directions. And actually, in a lot of cases, they will give you much more power than you might get on your phone specifically for the journey that you want in your car and your experience in the car, because it's built purely around that journey. So it's not built to do everything like a phone is. It's built to help you in your car, to help you get to your destination, to help you manage your car. And yet still, people are reverting to these devices. And that's often, if you talk to people, it's because they don't trust their car. So they say, you know, I just use it and I know it's the right place. With the car, it's sometimes I really struggle to put in the address of where I'd like to go, or I try and use the voice control and it just doesn't work. And then I look and I see lots of different options and none of them seem right. I just go back to my phone. And that is a problem. It's a problem partly for people who are designing these incredible navigation systems in the car. They're spending all this time making sure it's intuitive and easy, and people are not even trying them in some cases, or trying them and then reverting back to a phone. And that's frustrating. And that's something that we should be trying to fix, because it's much safer if your hands are on the steering wheel, you're able to use your voice and talk to your car, and you're not getting your phone out and sticking it up. You can just use the car and the design of the car for what it was built for. So there are some breakpoints here around people not trusting their machines, and sometimes with good reason. This is one of my favorite examples. This is a football club in the UK that had to apologize to their fans that traveled to Hendon before the game. There is no hiding from the fact that our team bus traveled to Hundon, 70 miles from our actual destination. The club stresses this will not happen again. And the problem here you have is there's a human error, right, which was a typing error, maybe a speaking error, but I'm going to guess here it was probably a typing error. And Hendon and Hundon are both places in the UK. The sat-nav understood that as this is a real place. So Hundon, it's a real place. I can give you directions to it. And that's an issue, because basically you have a problem, which is that it's really easy for a human being to make a mistake. And it's really easy for a machine not to know a mistake has been made. And so it's going to route you to the wrong place. And actually, most of us, if you think back about your experience of using machines to navigate, probably at some point you've made a mistake and the machine hasn't spotted it and you've gone somewhere in the wrong place. And this gets much worse when you think about voice. So these voice assistants, now I have multiple voice assistants in my home. I'm a huge voice fan. I have a smartwatch I talk to all the time. But these are designed without screens. So they're designed without screens, which means you really want to remove ambiguity. You want to be able to trust that whatever you ask of your machine, it's going to understand you properly and give you the thing that you like. However, it does not always happen the way you would expect. This is the kind of thing you see on Twitter a lot. Here you've got looking at my shopping list like what? Hashtag Alexa fail. And this is then the shopping list, and you've got loose leaf, Hamberry teeth. Now this, I'm going to guess as a human and as someone who drinks tea, this was probably loose leaf cranberry tea. Now that's an issue there, which is that the device hasn't understood me properly, but it doesn't know it hasn't understood me properly. So it's just added what it heard to the shopping list. And in mobility journeys, this happens a lot. So I'm speaking to my car, it doesn't understand me. And now I might correct it if I can see the screen. If I'm driving, I'm not really meant to be looking at the screen. I'm meant to be looking at the road. How do I correct it? How do I know that a mistake has been made? Because in destination entry in cars, it's actually really easy to make mistakes. And it's really, really hard to build for voice, and not because of the voice engines. You know, Alexa, Siri, Google, whatever your Nuance, whatever you're using, these are voice engines that can do a really good job at understanding a lot of information and, you know, cleaning it up and guessing at what you might have said. But you've got complexities like this. So if you're from the UK, you probably know that we say this place, Worcestershire. If you aren't from the UK, say you were driving to a meeting in Worcestershire, how on earth would you know that with your voice you're meant to say that Worcestershire and not something along the lines of Worcestershire or something else? And this is really common. So there are lots of words in street addresses that are not pronounced the way they look. And that's complex. So if you're programming your Alexa or something to understand voice navigation directions, should you program in Worcestershire, which is the real one? Should you also program in Worcestershire, just in case? Should you also program that in for every different kind of accent? And you basically end up with a very, very complex situation where you've got huge number of addresses in the world, in hundreds of thousands of addresses in every single country in the world. You've got different accents, different ways of people saying them. Sometimes someone's going to say the number first. Sometimes they're going to say the street name first. How do you program this in? And then sometimes you have problems like this, and however perfect that speech recognition is, it cannot differentiate between 241st Street and 241st Street, because these, as you can see here, these are both in New York, and they are said identically with my voice. I can say navigate to 241st Street, and that is exactly the same in both of these cases. So we have this problem that machines are not able to disambiguate. And this is, look, addresses is just one example of this, but there's a huge complexity here, which is when humans are interacting with machines, if you've got chances for error, you have issues with trust and you have issues with confidence, and people do not trust them. And then people don't use voice technology, which has been around and actually pretty good for quite a while now, but people don't trust it and they revert to what they know, which is getting that phone out and typing on that phone, and they have a less safe and a less smooth experience as a user. And in this world, as we're thinking about, human-machine interaction, that's where we're going. This really, really needs fixing. We need to think about this from the design perspective, not just let's make a great piece of technology that does a great job, but how do we make people feel confident? How do we help them understand that they can trust this machine to get them to the right door, not the wrong place halfway around the building, not the wrong bar of the city, not the wrong city. We want people to feel confident. They want them to feel trust in those machines that they use for these mobility journeys, now more than ever, I would say. And so from our perspective at what3words, the way we're seeing this is that it's actually time for a universal address system that was designed for human-machine interaction. So one that when I get in a car and I tell it where I'd like to go, I know it will actually take me to the right place. I know it will understand me perfectly, and I won't get in a problem where I've gone to the wrong place, or I try 5 times to enter the street name and it doesn't recognize it, so I give up and I get my phone out. And so there is a wonderful universal addressing system, GPS coordinates. Now this is ideal. It's highly, highly accurate. It lets me specify a spot on the beach. It doesn't have to be a building. I can specify anywhere in the world. Each different entrance has a different GPS coordinate. This is a really wonderful system. It works the same in every country in the world. The problem is it's not human friendly. So I can't communicate in strings of 16-digit numbers. So what we wanted to do is take the power of GPS and make it human friendly. So a human can input a GPS coordinate easily into a machine, or they can send it on a wedding invitation, they can say it over the phone, they can put it on a tweet, they can do whatever they like with that address. So what we did is we took the entire world, we divided it into 57 trillion squares. Each square is 3 meters by 3 meters, and every single one has been given 3 words from the dictionary as an address. So I can say, meet me at Thread Strollers Bumble, and that is that square as the entrance to someone's home in Germany. So every square in the world has already been assigned one of these addresses. You guys can look yours up. We have an app, we also have a website. If you just go to what3words, you'll see there's a website with a map, and you can look up the 3-word address of your front door. Now, these are assigned and they don't change. So if you didn't like Thread Strollers Bumble, you'd have to go 1 square along and see what the option is next to it. It'll be a totally different string of words. But this is done already. So every 3-meter square in the world, of which there are 57 trillion, every single one has been given 3 words from the dictionary, and you can use it just like a normal address. So I can say, meet me at where I've parked the car at Pirate Gather Daisy, and that is that 3 meter by 3 meter square. So that's the idea. It's just like a traditional address. It's just much more accurate, and it's literally made of 3 words, which are completely unique. So there is no other square called Pirate Gather Daisy anywhere in the world. Behind the scenes, this is a GPS coordinate. So we've made an algorithm that converts In2 Towers sensors into a GPS coordinate, and that can then be read by any map, any car, any phone, any drone, any autonomous delivery robot, whatever it is you're giving it to as a destination. The machine is going to read it as a GPS coordinate, but the human is going to input it as a 3-word address. So I can say to that delivery robot with my pizza, or I can say to my taxi driver, whatever it is, I can input into the app, or the navigation system, or the checkout page, In2 Towers sensors, and it will get me to that exact 3 meter square. And we've done this in 47 languages. We're trying to get as many languages done as we can. 47 so far. I think we did Slovak, which was number 47, but we've done Japanese, Korean, Chinese, Arabic, English, Spanish. So hopefully you'll be able to have a look at the 3-word address in your own language, and you can use it in your own language everywhere you go. So I actually use English when I go to Japan because I don't speak Japanese, but a Japanese tourist could also use 3-word addresses in Japanese in the UK. So every square on the landmass of the world has an address in all of these 47 languages. And you use this just like a normal address. So Mercedes, and actually quite a lot more cars now. Mercedes was first, but we've had lots of OEMs since integrate this into their car. So you'd simply say, hi Mercedes, what 3 words, sunroof, mole, jingles, and it will navigate you to that exact 3 meter square. So I'm just saying, navigate me to this square. The Mercedes car actually treats it as a GPS coordinate and navigates me there. We also recently announced our partnership with Here Maps. So this obviously means that we can not just be in cars going forward, but Here is in millions of cars around the world. So we can also integrate what 3 words for existing cars on the road, which is great because we've got so many users around the world now who are saying, please, can I use this in my car? So that's been pretty exciting. And a whole range of partners, and some of these are investors as well. So Mercedes, SAIC, and Subaru also joined us as part of that journey. But Mitsubishi was the most recent car company we announced a couple of weeks ago, which has built what 3 words offline in one of their recent car launches. So you can use what 3 words offline in your car as well. And the idea is that you can build this in just like a normal address, and it's a complement. It's not a replacement. I can still get in my car and say, take me to Starbucks, but I can also get my car and say, take me to Apple Banana Spoon. So that's the idea. So when we're thinking about trust, and going back to that thing we were thinking about, the idea here is it lets me trust I'm going to go to the right place, and it lets me trust my machine is actually going to understand me. So here's an example. This was actually my text message conversation on Saturday. We're doing socially distant walking in the UK, so you're allowed to have one person go on a walk with you. And so I texted my friend and I said, what about Sunday? Let's meet at 11 a.m. and sent the 3-word address of where we're going to meet outside. We're not allowed to meet inside, so we picked a spot outside St. Paul's Cathedral. You can see here we're also used to trusting each other and to not be on time. So I'm getting a text at 20 to 11 saying I'm just getting on my bike. But you can see here this exchange. It's actually quite straightforward. I've said this is where we're going to meet, and we haven't said outside St. Paul's near the big tree. We've just said select drums work. And actually thinking about design, what we've also done is we've built this into things like smartwatch apps. So you can see here, I've actually spoken to my watch and I've said, select drums work. And what it's then done is it's then taken me. You can see here, it's saying me it's 264 meters away with a little arrow, and it points as I move and tells me which direction to walk to. So you can see I was pretty close because you can see the cathedral there. And then when I showed up, I was able to see I was in the right place. But the important thing here is I actually wanted to talk about this, and this confidence thing is really important. So you can see here, this circle is actually, I got a little red bit here. And then when I arrived, I actually got this lovely green thing that said arrived. And that's a design choice, which is about confidence and trust. So the whole point of what3words is knowing you're going to show up in the right place. But what we've done here from a design perspective is say, let's make it really clear and let's give them the confidence. You are standing in that 3-meter square where you arranged to meet. You're there, you've arrived. You can see I was 4 minutes late, but you can see I've arrived at that place that we arranged to meet. And that's the idea, is that in these design experiences, we should really be trying to help people feel confident, feel sure that they can leave those phones in their pocket so that they can have this incredible experience, whether it's in a car, on a phone, with an Alexa device, so they can speak and they can feel confident that they're actually going to show up in the right place. And that's where I think we're going to see the shift. Once we think more carefully about how we can create trust, we can create confidence, we can make sure that people trust their cars to show up in the right place. That's how we're going to be able to get away from this world where everybody has a phone pinned up on their dash, and they'll be able to actually trust their cars. They'll be able to trust their cars to get them to the right place today when they're driving. And of course, this is integral in the next few years when you start to not be driving, and when this is an autonomous vehicle. I really, really want to know it's going to take me to the right place, whether that's a car park or whether that's meeting someone for a socially distanced picnic in the park. So that's the idea, and that's really what we've been thinking about, is how you can create confidence, how you can be really, really sure, and therefore see that people actually trust their mobility journeys are going to take them to the right place. I'm going to try and stop sharing now. I think I'll stop sharing. Dave.
I love the word you were saying, a social distant picnic. So that's really a word of 2020. You know, we would never have talked about a social distant picnic before. So, and there's another thing that came to mind in your very interesting, lively presentation. Now, you were saying about many languages. I mean, it's translated in about 14 languages. You were saying, I think. But did you make sure you took out the curse words and the dirty words?
This is a good question, yes. And this is actually why it's actually quite complicated. So it's taken us, quite a lot of years to get to 47 languages, because every time you have to start from scratch. So you don't translate. You don't translate from English, because for example, in English, the word snowman is one word. And in French, it's bonhomme de neige. It's 3 words. So you can't translate. So you have to start from scratch. You have to take out the swear words, but you also take out words that don't make sense to you. So for example, in Tamil, which is a language spoken in India and Sri Lanka, we took out the word turtle, because it's not a rude word, but it's very bad luck to have a turtle in your house. So therefore, you wouldn't want it in your address. So that's the level of complexity. When you're thinking about this design, you really want people to feel comfortable and that this is a language that they can use in their everyday life.
I didn't know about turtle, that that's a dirty word in another language. Now you say 47 or 14? 40.
47 languages.
Now, how long has your company, been around?
So quite a while. So 2013 was the kind of beginning of writing the algorithm. And then the first few years were obviously building the technology. And then it kind of the last 3 years, I would say, is when things started to do that kind of famous shape, everything started to go up. It's certainly been exciting the last 2-3 years.
Do you foresee that it even could replace a classic address?
So it's a good question. I actually would say no, because I think it's a compliment, because classical addresses are really useful for certain things. So for example, delivering mail, classic addresses are actually ideal. They're literally designed for mail delivery. So they start big, right? Country, then it's like next county, and then it gets smaller. That's perfect for sorting mail. That's like a really good way. You start big and you put it in the right country box, and then you put it in the right. So that's really good for that. We would say we're useful in the last mile when there's a machine. So when there's a human with a machine, that's when you'd use what3words. If there's no machine, you wouldn't use what3words because you need a machine to decode the addresses. And if it's just, for example, if I'm just sending a piece of mail, I might not need it. But in the last mile, the 3-word address can be an additional piece of info that gets you to the exact location. In a car, it can be used instead of a traditional address. But we would say it's always an option. So sometimes I'm going to want to use a traditional address. Sometimes to ample banana spoon.
Oh yeah, well, for me, you were a little digital with the last sentence, but I understand the concept. I understand what you were saying. Now, Julia Beringer, she's IT manager, Scrum Master at Shop Floor Truck Powertrain. I don't know the company, but you might know the company. But she's saying a very funny thing about this is that her team is actually using it to locate special spots within big production buildings. So that's also something you can use 3-words for. Is that right?
Yeah. So if you've got a big building, and for example, if you're unloading a truck at one side of a big building, it'd be really helpful if you went to the right loading bay or the right door, so you can use it to navigate to the exact right spot around a big building on the outside. Yeah, absolutely.
Now, we were talking about trust, or you were talking about trust, and there's a very good remark made by Petra Schutter. Petra is Global Customer Quality Manager at TE Connectivity, and she was wondering, could it be in future that in order to actually drive somewhere that you need a contract with, for instance, Google or maybe your company, otherwise you cannot get there? Is that possible?
So I think the whole idea of a lot of these systems is designed for kind of mass use, right? So with what3words, for example, the idea here is that we have an app and a website which are free, and it's always free for people to just use. But the businesses themselves, if they want to integrate it, so for example, Mercedes or other car companies, when they integrate our code, that's where we charge. So we charge the business. And the whole idea with this is, well, we want to be in everything. We want to be in every map, every car, every ride-hailing app, so that people can navigate there. But there's always the way for people to use the what3words app and the what3words website for free as well, anytime.
Okay, so we'll be free, we'll be available. So that's where we trust you and have to trust the other companies. Now, of course, one of the major issues we're talking about today is also about diversity within the automotive industry. You're not quite a startup. You're more like a scale-up, because you started in 2013. So, but do you think in companies, young companies, like the one you're working for, is it easier to have more or better diversity within the company than older established companies?
I think possibly yes, because you're building from scratch, right? So you can make decisions building. When you built, we're about 130 people, so you kind of built that up. That said, there are lots of kind of, I would say, upstream issues. So for example, for us, when we're recruiting, you can really struggle to get a diverse pipeline of applicants. And actually, a lot of that responsibility is on us as a company to do a better job at reaching people. But that can be really frustrating. It can be really frustrating for me if I'm interviewing somebody and I've interviewed 10 people and they all look the same. They've all got very similar backgrounds. They're all the same sex or whatever it is. And that can be frustrating. But I also believe that that's actually the responsibility of the company. Like, you can't just sit back and go, oh gosh, it's actually quite hard to recruit a diverse team. You've actually got, and actually I think one of the great things about being a small company is some of this can be led, actually, doesn't just have to be by the leadership team. So in our team at what3words, this is actually led by a group in the company it was like a grassroots group who sprung up because they cared very deeply about it. And the great thing about being small is you can really amplify that voice and you can listen to it. I think in some big companies, it can get easy for that kind of grassroots activism within a company to get lost. And I hope, we're listening and we want to listen, and we're lucky that size allows you to hear some of those voices in a way that probably is a bit harder at a big organization.
Okay, that's an interesting take. Now, how big is the 3-words? How big is that?
So 130 people, mostly in the UK, but in a few offices in Asia and the US as well. and the field.
Okay. Now, one final thought, Claire. I would like your opinion on that, because I was talking while we were networking, in the networking part of this event. I was talking to Barbara, and I hope I pronounced it properly, Szawarczyk. She's originally from Poland, but working in Munich right now, working for Capgemini, and for Capgemini, she's working for BMW. Now, I was talking with her about the quotes. There's a quota in Germany, actually, a couple of days established, which says that every company, I don't know precise details of the law, but they're saying that 30% of the board needs to be female. Now, what do you think of that? Is that a good way? Is that a good way to do it by law, or is it not helping, or is it helping? What do you think?
I think I don't know, and I think one of the useful things we'll be able to do in the next 10 years is measure the data. We're a tech startup, we love data, and I think that the most useful thing will be to try a bunch of stuff and then look at the data and say what does work. Because I would say in our experience, certainly in my experience, once you have a decision to look harder and be more careful about your diversity in your pipeline, it helps. It does make you pay more attention. It makes you pay more attention to where your job ads sit and the way your job ads are written. And so in some ways, I think the framing of having it something you're aiming towards, like a target, can really help, because it does like help streamline your thinking around it. But I think the most important thing will be try a bunch of different stuff and then measure it, and then go, this is startup life, right? Try something, measure it. If it doesn't work, do something different.
Okay, so now, I'm always interested. Sometimes I even take pictures of bookshelves, because the books on the shelves behind somebody tell something about this person. Now, I cannot read it because it's very small, but is there a particular book you would like to mention, and it could be inspiring, especially for diversity or for female professionals in the automotive industry, that you would say, okay, if you read one book during Christmas, it should be this book?
Oh, I like that question. So I'm going to go for two. So there's one I've been reading recently, which is by the Chief Ethics Officer of Airbnb. This came out quite recently, and it's about, basically, it's called Integrity, and it's about building businesses with integrity. And honestly, I think it's absolutely fascinating. I'm not surprised that Airbnb is doing so well and that this IPO is coming despite a pandemic. I think it's absolutely amazing. And so that's one read. And then the other one I would read is not a business book, but it's a really hopeful book, and it's by a guy called Adam Rutherford, and it's called A Brief History of Everyone Who Ever Lived. And it's actually about evolution and biology, but honestly, I read it during the pandemic, and it was one of the most hopeful things, because it was basically all about the diversity of humans and where we came from, and how in the end, you don't have to go back that many years before we're all related to each other. And it was just an incredibly joyful and hopeful read. So I'd say those are two.
Claire, wonderful. What a great positive note to finish your keynote. Now, do me one favor. Could you write down those two titles in the chat so everybody can relate to it? And I would like to thank you very much for your very inspiring keynote speech.